talking about the other day, we were talking about the importance of time management, and this next one's, I believe, once you get your time management sorted and understand how to make time work for you so you can get the outcomes that you want, it's really important to get clear on who you want to become.
Yeah,
Obviously, you're helping people with their pathway. So this is something that you do extremely well, no doubt. But helping, especially young people, I remember I was playing professional footy, and I wish I knew this stuff at that age. One of the best bits of advice I would ever give to a young athlete is obviously we're exploring more about who we are, what we enjoy doing, potentially what our beliefs are around our capabilities and our ability in general, but also starting to get clear on what we need to invest in order to get to where we want to get to as the athlete or the man we want to become. And that's a big thing that I never got taught at a young age, and it's why I'm so excited and passionate about teaching people how to do that now, because it doesn't matter what age. Ideally, obviously as an athlete we have a shelf life, yeah,
yeah,
but
100%.
regardless of where we're at in our life, we can still use that same process to decide who we want to become for each chapter of our life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that the post that I shared to you the other day about the $10 million. Did you get that link I sent to you?
Yeah, I did on the WhatsApp. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I think when you look at time that way, I think if you start from the top down, and if you actually understand that time is like the most precious currency you'll ever own, and it's important that you look after the time. And it could be things like getting prepared for a competition, getting prepared for training, and that's one of the things that we try and install in players. But we also say to them, I've worked with some top level coaches over the years who are amazing coaches, but the time management is poor. And ironically, 3 months later, that particular head coach of a team in Europe's being sacked. And it shows you how important time management is, and planning things properly and allowing yourself time as well to do when you've got to work, but also allowing yourself the time when you need to rest and recover. And I think if you match it all in together, it's so, so important.
Definitely. And as you said there as well, like the intention behind that time, and that really ties into, I guess, understanding what you value and what you want, because, time is our most valuable resource, right? We all have the same 24 hours in a day. And some of us go, for example, how does this person seem to get all of these things done? Or how do they seem to have more success than I do? And obviously, there are factors like luck and network, etc. But more often than not, they're spending their time doing the things that provide the best return on investment for that time.
Yeah,
And
100%.
if we don't also allow ourselves the time to slow down to go, hey, what do I actually value? What do I want from my life? What are the things that I need from a skill set standpoint, or as you mentioned, earning the right to train, for example. When I was playing footy, I was out drinking 3 or 4 nights a week, and I still know a lot of professional, NRL players and AFL players who are doing the same thing. I'm like, boys,
Yeah.
if you want to be the peak of your sport, is that going to be the best thing for you to improve your recovery so that you can train better tomorrow, or so that you can, feel fresher mentally tomorrow? More often than not, it's
I
not.
think that, yeah, it's true, and it's so key, and it still amazes me that that mentality is in NRL all the way through, and even to the UK, to the Super League, it's exactly the same. And I think one of the big things that we realised through the EPPP project in the Premier League in England was that unless you educate people in certain areas, then they're not going to know that information. And one of the big things they touched on in a huge way was alcohol and the effects of alcohol. And I think once young people understand what you're actually doing to your body and how it's going to actually hinder your performance and training and match day, all of a sudden you develop these players who don't want to go out drinking, or they'll go out, but they won't drink. But if we don't educate them, how are they going to know? And that all comes down to that time management. I mean, we went to that David Goggins event the other week in Brisbane, and he talks about in his book as well, in his audio book, about wasted time and wasted time that we waste every day. And I think if you actually sit down and write everything down that you've got to do for the next day, and actually write a diary of stuff that you've done that day, you actually realize how much time you waste, like just doing
Mm,
meaningless things that doesn't mean anything. And I think we've got to look at it that way as well.
definitely. Well, yeah, the time audit, like it's like money if you want to, understand how you can make more money or how you can stop spending so much. Go through, it's like a $5 coffee here or a muesli bar there, and it's like they may not be a large transaction, but if you make a frequent, make that transaction frequently, it's a lot of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. And that was one of the
And
ones
this,
I went through. Sorry to cut over. I went through bank
you're right.
statements looking at 6 packs of beers, and it's like I was purchasing 5 or 6 packs a week, and it was like you add it up, and it was over $140, $150, and it was like, wow, if you add that up over a year, there's a lot of money and a lot of time wasted driving to the bottle shop to get it.
Yeah. Oh man. Like, look, there's no harm in having a beer or two, but if you're looking at it from, once again, there are times where you need to go all in on something. And I keep bringing this back to what you're doing with the pathway for players. That $150, Ray, you could have spent on an extra physio session a week, or, various other things to get your body right. Yeah.
Gym membership, restoration zone. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So and the challenges, there's always going to be distractions and other things that do come at you. And once again, speaking to those young athletes, like alcohol, you're young, you haven't experienced a lot of things throughout life. You obviously have had your own experiences, and you get to have the ability to drink alcohol for the first time or to go out night clubbing, and it's new and it's exciting, which is, fair play to you. Go try that, but also understand that there's a trade-off, right? You can't have both
Yeah.
if you want to be the best.
I think if we educate the athletes a bit more, like I think as I said to you, the book I read around alcohol, and it was an amazing read, The Alcohol Experiment, and it wasn't really casting any sort of opinions on anyone. It was like, just try this for 30 days, but she also educates you around it as well. And I think from
Mm,
athletes, I think especially in Australia, like we see in the generation coming through now where, they want to be out, with the mobile phones, they want to be out drinking. And it's like, I think if they just get educated a bit better around it, and I think they've started to do a really good job. And it was an interesting topic. Like we were talking this morning at breakfast with the girls around the table, and I was talking about I was at the game last night, Barcelona versus Real Madrid. And they said, "Oh, Dad, is it like England? Where all the fans are in the stadium getting drunk, or like back home in Australia and they're drinking beers?" And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's completely different. It's like it's a glass of wine or a small beer, and it's all around the culture of having the kids with them and having food. Like we didn't leave
mm.
the stadium till midnight last night, and it's just the cultural differences. And I think this is why people wonder why the likes of Spain and France just do so well in like football and rugby and tennis. I don't think it's to do with just because they practice harder or they time manage better. I think a lot of the cultural differences as well. It's not a huge big drinking culture, and I think unfortunately in England and Australia, I think we've got them.
Yeah, I think about that a lot because when I was playing rugby in France, and the relationship with alcohol was so different. Like when we'd finish, rugby here, we'd generally crack a few tins and you'd end up having a big night out. Whereas my first game when we were coming back from Paris, the lads were pulling out a cheese board and a
Yeah,
champagne, and we had a champagne and just debrief. I was like, this is so odd, like very
yeah,
odd. But then, I went to Barcelona game while I was over there, and the exact same experience. Like everyone was super chilled, family. It was like a big family event. It was just such a different way at looking at
yeah,
why you go to sport. Whereas generally here, it's like let's go to Caxton before the footy and have a few pints and then see where the night takes us.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I
It's so
think
true.
as you were saying, Ray, that really to bring it back is like that really does come back to, I guess, our beliefs around things and being educated and establishing the right relationships for who we want to become and the results that we want. So obviously, if you have a healthy relationship with alcohol, you can enjoy a nice glass of red wine or whatever it may be and not feel the need to have a big night. Or you might have a better relationship with yourself and understand that, hey, you don't need the alcohol as a social lubricant to go out and enjoy a night out with your mates.
Yeah, no, it's so true, and I think just that whole education, I think, needs to be looked at from the bottom up, and not even around things like alcohol, but everything like time management, scheduling, preparation. I think it needs to be looked at properly and seriously. And I think the benefits that like Australia as a country would reap, and also some other countries as well, I think you just see athletes just performing at another level if they're more rounded and more educated. But it seems like I've been in Australia, I think, for 16 years on and off now, and it just seems to be the same things you see happening with athletes and the same issues, and we don't seem to be getting any closer to getting it right.
No, it's definitely an interesting cultural thing where you look at, and this is a generalization, but Australians definitely play off this. I'm too like a bit of a cool vibe where it's like, oh, she'll be right, it'll be okay. But when we spend a bit of time in America, for example, and they're just so evangelistic and so supportive, they want to hear about what your goals are, what your ambitions are, and as soon as they find out what you're wanting to achieve, they're like, oh, you got to meet my buddy. I'm going to introduce you to this person, that person, boom, 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 and it's all about like, how do we help you be as successful as possible? But in Australia, it's like, and from my experience, and this is once again a generalization, but we keep our our cards close to our chest because we're worried about we don't have this, I guess, abundance mentality where we do feel everyone can be successful, or we're worried about someone being better than us, or we don't want to seem too excited to a degree.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that for the last 15 or 16 years in Australia, and I spent, I think I told you, 3 or 4 years in the US living, and it's completely that, and a lot of people will get carried away with it and go, oh, that's just like what it's like in the US, or that's what America's like. It's very Hollywood and it's all. But when I've actually looked back on it, I realized probably the best 3 or 4 years I had was when I was in the US, and it really opened my eyes to what is possible, and how supportive the people were, and they really sort of gun for you. They really want you to do well. Where I do find that we get a little bit of that tall poppy syndrome, and not just in Australia, but I've seen it in England as well. It goes on, and I think obviously we share a lot of the same roots as English and Australians.
Yeah, definitely. You shipped us out here.
I am an Aussie now with a Scouse accent. I've got my passport.
Yeah. No, it's definitely interesting, like environment and culture and so many things. But I think once again, when you're clear on who you want to be, like you got to really try and get yourself around or in that environment where the best are, because that way you start thinking and acting, behaving how they are, and what's delivering those results. Because once again, for example, if I wanted to feel like I'm being encouraged and supported more, as I mentioned, I felt like that was happening more in the US. So why would I not go to the US if I really wanted to feel that way and reap the benefits of that? Or, when I went to France to play footy, that's what I felt I needed to do from an environmental standpoint to take my game to the next level.
Yeah. And this is what we've got going on. I don't know if you can see the tennis courts behind me.
I can see the tennis. I've been watching, mate. I've been looking straight past you.
And it's the Catalonia Tennis Academy. So my daughter's down there. She's on the middle court. And one of the things that we've noticed with her and her journey in tennis at the moment is how much she's dropped off in Australia in the past year or two. And it's down to that they feel like once they've done 2 hours on a tennis court, then they're done for the day, and that's what everyone tells them that's enough. Where, as an example, she played in a tennis tournament the other day in Barcelona. She won a qualies game, and she played her first round match, and she thought she was done for the day. And then her Spanish coach, Felix, he goes, Liv, you go for lunch. We'll see you back at 3:00. And she's like, what? And her face was just distraught. And he's like, we'll see you back training 3:00, and you've got afternoon session intensive 3 till 7. So she finished that day competing 7.5 hours of tennis. And it's like she gets up the next day. Yeah, and she goes, Dad, my legs are sore. I said, okay, it's 9 degrees in the ocean at the moment. Let's go in and we'll go and get your legs sorted and we'll recover, yeah. And she didn't want to, and she got in and she done it, and she come out and she goes, Dad, I feel really good. I'm ready to go. I said, well, let's go. And this is what we're trying to install into her now, is that mentality of you've got to do more than the person next to you if you want to get anywhere in life. And that's what I think is going amiss in Australia at the moment. They think by playing football or soccer, as we call it back home, that they think by doing 3 1-hour sessions a week and have a game of a weekend, and mum and dad pay $3,000 in fees for the season. They think their son's going to turn into the next David Beckham. You're absolutely kidding yourself. You're not going to get close to it.
100%. No chance. It's. Sorry to cut you go.
No, I was just saying, it's just, I think that we need to re-educate parents as well on like what's required and why people like it. There's this myth that goes around that, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi or LeBron James, they're just born that way, and it's not born that way. It's that repetition and hard work they've put in for 15 years.
Yeah, 1000%.